You might remember from my recent data pack review that I mentioned how horizontal decks are going to gain a huge foothold with the new release cards that are pushing the core meta game into one that heavily favors horizontal gameplay. Well, I think it's time to whip out our anti-horizontal gameplay strategies. I've been racking my brains over it. Currently there just aren't too many ways on the runner side to deal with horizontal strategies. Sure, there are a few hard counters such as Apocalypse, but those are very narrow because they cost lots of influence for the most part. Most other strategies don't work very well because horizontal gameplay basically forces you as the runner to trade with the co-op click for click, and that is almost always against your favor when the co-op is using expensive assets that cost more than 3 credits to trash. Even Wizard cannot keep up for the most part. So today I'm gonna play Haley with IMP Recursion and see how that works against S-Sniper's asset spam near Earth Hub. His asset spam does not involve Museum of History, but it's still mostly assets. So instead of Sweet Sweet and Hedge Fund, he runs Diversified Portfolio alongside a bunch of really annoying assets to trash. Assets that you really cannot afford to spend pure credits to trash. So I get a pretty good start. There's no Proco sadly, but it has everything else. It has the Astrolabe, it has money, I drew into money, and it has a hyperdriver which allows me to accelerate my early game, giving me more clicks to check his remotes and basically to set up. As you know, Haley requires a lot of setup, so having the hyperdriver early is a huge bonus, not to mention that both hyperdrivers appear in my opening, so I'm able to get 2 7-click turns right off the bat. That's a pretty huge deal. Still, no Proco, which is sad, so I'm going to scavenge the cash here to trigger Haley to install the hyperdriver. The second hyperdriver, which I will sack next turn. Then I'll scan his remotes for a bit. I can afford to trash one item, so after running a couple of servers, I trash the Mamba Temple because that's going to pay off big time if I decide not to keep it down. Then I'll install the Aesop's for 3 credits next turn, off selling the cash. Another big reason to play Imp Recursion in Shaper as opposed to Anarch is that you get access to influence-free Astrolabe, and Astrolabe is by far the best method of dealing with asset spam. So now you notice, even though I don't have a Proco, I'm getting nearly free card draw. My hand is just flooded with cards. And that's a direct result of having Astrolabe available this early on, which is absolutely fantastic for Haley, because I always start my turn with 7 or 8 cards, allowing me to fire off my ability very easily. So as you saw there, I installed Daily Cast into same old thing, followed by SMC. I'm going to check a random remote, hoping it's gender, but I see a team sponsorship instead. Pretty tough choice. Now, teams, I actually wanted to tutor the Imp with SMC here, but you can't do that during an access. I committed to the access already, and I decided to just trash it with pure money because I could run in again and get my Imp out, but wasting a click that way is probably not worth it. So I'm just going to sack my credits and kill his team sponsorship, because every time he scores an agenda with team sponsorship, that would cost me 1 Imp token to undo the efforts. I mean, because when he triggers team sponsorship, he's undoing my trashing efforts. So for a deck that's trying to keep the assets down, trashing the team spawns is a must. Sadly, I'm not able to keep his money down very well due to the double pads, and he did find 2 team spawns, which really makes my life a hell of a lot harder. So right off the bat, things are so bad that I need to pawn off the same old thing just so that I can get some money. And he reinstalled what I believe was a Mamba Temple in the new server. So here I'm just going to trash the Sand for sure using the Imp. Now I do have one more Scavenge in my hand. That's pretty good news. This means that I can actually contest the Sand for free and still have one more Imp token for the next turn. I wonder what I should trash next turn. The DBS seems like the obvious target, but with an RNDI in hand, I think it's a good idea to hammer R&D with DBS refreshing his R&D for me. In fact, it's arguable that it's a mistake for me not to just play the R&D and hammer R&D. Perhaps I should have done that. That might have netted me a lot more agendas. The thing is, the moment you get your first R&D run with 2 accesses, you can be almost certain that the co-op will ice up R&D subsequently. So that basically limits your investment into that RNDI. You only get 2 accesses off the top of it, and you can't really follow up after that. As you can see, I'm not very set up yet. I don't have access to breakers. Speaking of breakers, now that the game is paused, we'll take a bit of time to explain my breaker suite. Because I'm spending so much influence on Imp, I actually can't really afford breakers. My breakers are basically 3 LLDS processors into 3 chameleons. That is it. Which is fine, because if you think about it, most of the ice nowadays don't cost, are not of higher strength than 6. Most ice are at 5 strength. The only 6 strength ice you have to worry about are Archer and Archangel, both of which are somewhat painful but not the worst. Alright, so I choose to destroy the team spawn with my imp token instead of the DBS because I'm really afraid that a breaking news will come out and undo all my efforts. I've kind of showed that I do not have access to Clot, which is a big problem. And here I made a mistake. I trashed the Proco because I completely forgot that I still didn't have a Proco installed. I would have installed that Proco if I actually remembered that. So, at least the team spawn is gone, but now he's continuing the asset spam, which draws me a lot of cards. So I guess the Proco is not that important. And now I'm just gonna legwork him because I suspect there are lots of agendas in hand. I find a food, which is something that any H can almost never score. You'd almost never want to play food naked, and it doesn't do anything in hand. So, well, I did find the food, so that evens up the score. Thankfully, he doesn't have an Astro token, you notice, from the Sense score, and I trashed a hostile infrastructure. He continues horizontal spamming, which allows me to draw more cards. And at this point, I'm still drawing into a bunch of not very useful cards. What I really want to see at this point is more caches, more clone chips, especially clone chip and scavenge, to get me to recur the imp so that I can keep his assets down. It seems like his assets are getting hopelessly out of control this game, but I'm still gonna give it a shot. I mean, this is an imp recursion deck after all. My whole point is to kill his assets so that he cannot score agendas. With Astro, he doesn't have an Astro in his score area, so sooner or later he'll draw into agendas, and I can pick them off via legwork or by checking his remotes. So no R&D pressure is still fine. I mean, I did play the R&D eye, but that's just to invite him to ice up, put more ice on R&D, which means less ice on HQ, which means I should be able to find agendas in hand. So the game continues, and I draw into my second Proco, and I think I remember to install this one. That's pretty important. So now I have a decent number of credits. The double daily cast did a whole bunch of work alongside Aesop's, but my imp has run out after trashing the hostile infrastructure and a bunch of other stuff just now. So Proco comes in, I see a legwork, and I think it's time to go for a legwork right now. Because he installed a bunch of stuff last turn that could be very dangerous for me if he finds an Astro into Sansan. But first, killing the DBS. This is in preparation for the legwork, because now if he draws agendas right now, he isn't able to bury them with DBS. So he Jackson draws, takes a credit, and trashes a single card from HQ. So this is probably the time to legwork. I'm sensing it. The question is, can I get through HQ? This is a pretty tricky question because I haven't actually set up my breaker suite yet. To set up, I need a couple of LLDSs. So the problem with LLDS right now is if I install my LLDSs, I won't be able to install Chameleon. So I decided to just legwork, and thankfully it's just a pop-up window. That way I'm able to get his Astro script. You can bet your life he would score the Astro script next turn if not for me sniping it out right here. So that's a good news. Very, very good news for me that I denied the Astro. You can see how powerful legwork is. This is another motivation for playing such a deck. With influence on legwork instead of David or other stuff, you're placing immense HQ pressure, which goes very well with your imp denial. Using imp denial, you're slowing down their rate of scoring agendas, which means that HQ will be very juicy for the picking. If you can subdue the Jacksons and DBSs, you're going to have a lot of agendas clumping out in hand, and that's what I'm trying to force. Alright, so far so good. I'm up 4 points to 2, and you notice that another big upside to Imp is that it gets past any defensive shenanigans. So you're talking about encryption protocol and industrial genomics, both of which aren't relevant this game, but they are relevant in other matchups. Imp just completely circumvents them. Of course, now Imp is weak to cyber decks, and that is something that I have to be aware of. You don't want to install a fresh Imp only to run into the cyber decks. That is probably the saddest thing you can do. So now it's time to place R&D pressure. I need to eventually force him to rest his R&D ice. With double LLDS out, I think I can deal with his R&D. I just have to respect the fact that he might have an Archangel out. So I'm going to double install Chameleon right here. And I'm going to name Code Gate Sentry. Code Gate for toll booth, Sentry for the potential assassin. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have to worry about 6 strength eyes, namely Archangel. I doubt he's running Archer, so Archangel is the only real problem here because I don't have instant David available to me. So an Archangel will have to fire, and indeed, I slam into the Archangel. Now, I misplayed here. I allowed him to fire the Trace. It's a hefty Trace 6. What I should have done here was to use SMC to get a cash out so that I will have more credits to beat the Trace. Right now, he basically forces me to spend all my money on the Trace. I think in this situation, he should have pumped one more credit into the Trace to force me to trash the Charizard. Or rather, bounce the Charizard and trash everything on the Charizard. That would have been a huge setback. So thankfully, he didn't do that, which allowed me to keep my double Chameleons. If he bounced my Charizard, all 3 Chameleons would end up in the heap, and I'll be massively behind. That would have been a very scary proposition. So, yeah, that's something to be really worried about. So, and sadly, because I finished the run with 0 credits, I couldn't afford to continue into the final piece of ice, so I did not get my R&D access there. So as you can see, the assets are just going out of control by this point. With diversified portfolio, he has well over 20 credits and a lot of pets ticking down. So at this point, it's time to give up on the Imp delaying plan. With Imp, I delayed him in scoring. He still doesn't have an Astro out. He's still only on 2 points, and with my double leg work, I was able to obtain 4 points. So I think this strategy has some merit. Slowing the Corp down with Imp, and then going in for multiple leg works to catch some early agendas. Now the only question is, can I close out the game via R&D before he scores out to 7? That's the big question. Can I? Is it possible? So he starts placing the pressure. The Sansan comes out along with double team sponsorship. Oh crap. Astro goes out. And here's the worst news. The team spawns are not going to recur assets. They're going to install ice for free on R&D. So now I have a lot of ice on my plate to worry about. Thankfully, Chameleon is one of the most efficient breakers once you have multiple LLDSs out. Unfortunately, I finally found my 3rd LLDS. So theoretically, I do have enough money to install the LLDS and then run R&D. The problem is, I need the double install of the Chameleon this turn. Because I need to worry about Assassin. I cannot have Assassin fire on me. So I need to install the LLDS before the double Chameleon. But I don't have enough clicks to install double Chameleon at this point, so I'm just going to install the single LLDS and attempt the double Chameleon next turn. So the plan now is to set 2 Chameleons, one at Code Gate, one at Sentry. Barriers are completely fine because NT is there to take care of the wraparounds. The good news is NEH doesn't run any barriers that are higher than strength 0, so I'm completely fine with this. In the meantime, he gets up to 6 points, and this is really go time. This is time to hammer R&D with all that I've got. Should I have trashed a Sansan? Maybe. I don't think it would have made a difference, honestly. Given how easy it is for him to recur stuff. But now that he's got a build, he's able to put on yet another piece of ice on R&D. And this is how horizontal NEH just goes out of control. If you cannot control them early and win early enough, they just snowball this way. They go both horizontally and vertically on R&D. It looks like an L shape from the Corp side, and it's really tough to deal with. So, time to get my 6 strength Chameleons on the table. And it's a run on Jackson first. I need to hit Jackson so that he would potentially shuffle agendas back in R&D. He chooses not to fire out Jackson, so it's R&D time for me. Hopefully I can get past R&D with the credits that I have. Let's see what he's got. First, a wraparound, that costs 1 credit. And then I have to hit double Toll Booth. Toll Booth costs 4 credits each. So that immediately drains my money by quite a bit. Don't have too many credits left. I have to hope that the last one isn't a Toll Booth. It sure isn't. It's a wraparound. So now I get to see a Project Build and an Assassin. So we are both tied on 6 points, but he has the dreaded Astro token and the Sansan Grid. So it's going to be quite easy for him to score out. The only question is, has he an agenda in hand that is not Global Food? If it's Global Food, he can't score it. Anything else is fair game. So what he does here is to get a NEH draw, hoping to draw into his agenda. He does not find it, but with a double draw of Jackson on click 2, he's able to find a breaking news, which he then places on the Sand. Astro token, game. Maybe I should have trashed the Sand. I don't know. I don't have enough credits. Not gonna lie, I was very disappointed that I lost that game because I tagged my deck against horizontal corpse and the result was still rather dismal. I mean, I got close, but close is not enough when you actively tag against that archetype that you're facing. I mean, if you think about it, in theory it should work, shouldn't it? You're matching the corp click for click with your imp tokens. Every time you spend a click to install a card, you spend a click running to trash it with imp for free. In fact, you're coming out ahead because the corp is fueling your draw with astrolabe. So every time my opponent installs something, I should be coming out ahead, but that wasn't the case. There just weren't enough imp tokens to go around everywhere, and a sniper eventually got out of control. So perhaps that I'm looking at the wrong place. Perhaps it really is impossible, a futile effort to go after remotes. Maybe I should just try to make a deck that does well on early central assaults, because if you notice, because I spent so much time setting up my board state and trashing assets, I had almost no time to run any centrals. I had RNDI in my opening hand, but I never abused the open RND. And HQ, I could only run it when there was legwork, otherwise it wasn't really worth it. So maybe I should change my deck. Instead of competing with assets, I should go for centrals instead. Well, at least that's a public service announcement for all of you out there who are thinking of trying anti-horizontal decks. Central pressure might just be the best answer after all. Thanks for watching, happy night running, and goodbye.